I'm going to just let this flow organically as best I can because and it probably won't. There's so many different segments of my story, and so I know that I can't get them all out at once. There's there's too much. There's too much to say, but um, when I fell and shattered my shoulder, I had called my sister, my oldest sister, and I expressed the actual tragedy of crushing my shoulder. But she was on a Panama Cruise and she wanted to talk about that and she was excited. She didn't want to hear really anything about it. And I think I have the texts and stuff are on my other phone because she was on a cruise ship. And so when she got back, she never called. Oh, I'll help you when I get back. Or do you want me to? I mean, I'll. It was always. She never called. They never called when I had COVID. And I had some really heartbreaking experience with my brother when I was living with them, and that even after surgeries, it was really hard to get them to help me, you know, like change the bedding or I mean, they gave me a place to stay and then, but they didn't, but they more or less harassed me because of the dogs, mostly because I had a dog that had a bladder infection and she's had problems and I was overwhelmed with what I was going through. And, there were so many things that happened during that time that it was really, that the expectation was far and beyond really what I could do at that time anyway. And so, my brother has a very explosive personality. He's very friendly and charismatic, but then when he gets mad, he gets over mad. He gets explosive and, and goes off. And so that had been happening quite a bit. And then, and Kathy, she wouldn't even look at me in the face. So she was just, I don't know what the problem was. I mean, and I tried so hard and at Christmas time, I bought a bunch of gifts, and I bent over backwards. In fact, the more I bent over backwards to try to be so full, and I really was full of gratitude. I really was, and they know I was. But no matter what I did, it was just there was some sort of contention going on there that nobody would really tell me why. And I had gotten this job, at a company called Chrysalis. And it was kind of rough because there were some kids there that, that were bickering, and these kids can become really violent. And so you've got to be ready, if one's going to aggress on another, to get in the middle of it, and then yet you can't stop them from anything either, which is really rough. If they want to go run out in the street, you can't. What are you going to do? You can try to stop them or get them to come back, but these kids are older, so and so it's really it's really a rough group too. And so I had been working with a couple of kids that night when I was working, and it turned out okay. We got everybody to be nice, and I was driving home, and and I knew that there was contention, that unspoken contention, back at my brother's house, and so. And I had said a prayer before I went. I really did. I said a prayer. But when I came, and so what happened, what really was like a catalyst, which was really it was kind of blown out of proportion. I was downstairs, and the electricity had gone off, and I was already downstairs, and so I just turned it back on, right? And then I went upstairs and told my nephew, go tell your mom and dad, to reset their alarm clocks because, the power went off and I turned it back on. No big deal. But he didn't do it. I mean, I didn't want to, I mean, I just went and he was awake and I said, can you please go in there and talk to your parents and let them know that they need to reset their alarm clock. And, I didn't go myself. Okay. So the next day when I get home from my job, and and I knew because of the way they were treating me really the whole time. It was like I was walking on glass the whole time I was there. And so and the reason that I was there was because I had just finished radiation and I had to wait a certain amount of time before the reconstruction part of my breast cancer was done. And so I had already gone through chemo and radiation, and I moved in because I just couldn't keep up, and I was going to need some help during all the surgeries that I was about to have. And so that's why I went. And normally, I've been fairly close to my brother. My kids loved him, and so they really listened to him. He was really the only male role model they had, and so, but whatever reason, things had just changed. There was just a change, and so, and none of them came to chemo or any of that. They did come to my surgery, initial surgery, but when when I came back to their house from working, I had gone in to the living room, and my brother Jason and Kathy, they were sitting there. They were sitting there waiting for me, I guess, because they were just sitting there. And they were really upset. They were really angry. And they were angry because, they were late for work, And they were already yelling at me, saying, I said, well, the breakers went off. I went and told I won't say his name. I went to your son. I told him, and this kid's like 14, 15 years old, and he was just playing, he heard me because I said it more than once to go and tell your parents to reset your alarm clocks. But they were mad because, they overslept. And so, and I told him, I said, well, I went and told, your kid, to go in there and wake you up. And I was very clear. There was no question about it. But anyway, when I came in, they were yelling, this is our house. How dare you turn back the circuit breaker on? And it was like, well, I was right down there. I could see which one popped off. I just turned it back on. It was no big deal. And then I went upstairs to tell your son to go, Oh, they just went totally off just because I actually turned the switch back on. That was really weird. It was like they were looking for a reason to be mad at me. And then when I told him, well, I told, your boy to go in there, very clearly, to go in there and wake you up so you could set your alarm clock, right? So they get him, and they're saying, did Aunt Treva come and tell you, and he just stood there. He didn't answer. And then they just let him go, and then proceeded to yell at me. And Kathy was going off. I don't remember what she said. Oh yeah, I do. She said, I want you out of here. This is because of the circuit breaker, right? I turned my back and I start going to the kitchen. And she's coming up behind me going, I want you out of here, like right behind my head. And I'm like, you? And I didn't say it. I never said it. But Jason, he knew what I wanted to say, but I never said it to her. I just said, you? And I stopped. And he goes, you're going to call my wife a bitch? You're going to call my wife? And he just totally over the top, exploded. You need to get out of my house. You need to get out of my house. And they made it such a huge, traumatic experience for me that I started to spiral. And I ran down the street. And at this point, my son was, I don't know, I think he was at work. That's a different part of the story. But they came at me so vicious. I'm not exaggerating either. They were vicious. And Jason is really explosive. And he just said, I want you out of my house. They were just, and all I had done was turn on a breaker. And I went and got, and so it was really extreme. Okay, it was really extreme. And I was just I knew right then, these people do not love me. They don't love me. They don't respect me. They don't care at all what I had gone through. And when you love somebody as much as I did my brother, and we had been close, it was like something inside of me just snapped. Was walking. I wanted to cry. I mean, I did. I was crying. I mean, I was more like panting. I wasn't really crying. I was hyperventilating. I was just like, I was stunned, and I couldn't believe, what they did. And so I can't remember exactly how it happened, but, I think that I found something and I wanted to hit my head with it, not to really do any harm to myself, but because I just couldn't imagine that if the people that, after going through cancer and chemo and radiation, and like I had a surgery like every 3 months I did. And then they attacked me absolutely for no reason, just because they were just, who knows why? I don't even know why. Still, I don't know why. Jealousy, I don't know. And so and then Hayden came out, and I just told him to to take me to the hospital. I told him to take me to the hospital. And when I was there, I told them what happened, and they asked me, do you feel like you need to go to, the, mental hospital? And I just said, I have no place else to go. I have nowhere to go. And I don't want to go back and be with Jason and Kathy. I mean, it was so explosive. And so heartbreaking to realize they didn't care. They didn't care at all. And I didn't know what I had done, and I was walking on eggshells because I wasn't in my own home, and I needed their help, and my job wasn't full time. It wasn't the right time for me to leave. And, fortunately for me, the people from the ward really came in and helped me. They didn't understand what was going on or why that even happened. I told her what I was going through. But, so I had to let them. I mean, I really wasn't suicidal. I was having a nervous breakdown. No question about that. But if my feelings was, if my brother and my children, if they don't love me, then I don't really want to be alive. That's all I felt, is that I didn't want to be here if they didn't love me. And that's exactly what I told the doctor. I said, and so he gave me a choice. He said, well, you can either go back there or wherever you want to go, or, and I just said, I don't have enough money to get a hotel room every night. And the way that they just treated me, there was no way. And in fact, I never did go back. I ended up going to stay at a long-term hotel facility after I got away from, out of the hospital. And usually people there, that are put there are usually very suicidal. They usually are using, and I didn't use alcohol or drugs or anything like that at all. I was still very devout. My church attendance was right on target. I went to church. I was very active. So I was not participating in any kind of activities like that at all, I mean, I had been going through so many surgeries. I talked to the doctor that was there, and he was really nice. And he said there was nothing I could do. I had to stay there for the 5 days or whatever, how long I had to stay, and I might as well just enjoy it. It was really hard on me because I was still healing, and it was really painful. But I couldn't relate to a lot of what was going on because it wasn't my circumstance. But I had no place else to go. And the doctor, he said, I can see you're not suicidal and that you're just fine, but there's really nothing I can do to have you leave right now. And so, and I can't remember the guy's name. I'm sure I could find out. But I told him what I was going through, and that I had just gone through breast cancer, chemo and radiation, and just had surgeries. And when you have gone through something like that, you're already very diminished. And then to find out that not only do they not have compassion for you, they are brutal. They're just, the fact that they could care less was brutally in my face. And I really felt like, and they had manipulated my youngest son to make him think that something was wrong with me. Simply why? Because I had cancer? Because I went through chemo and radiation? And you expect so much from me when I'm still recovering from all that? And then going through so many surgeries. And so, and right at that pivotal time, he just met his future wife. And so it was Jason's house and Kathy's house. It wasn't my house. And so I was made to feel diminished, like I was not a good parent because it wasn't my house. It was theirs. And so, him, of course, my child trying to impress her. But they had him completely messed up, thinking that it was my fault. It was never my fault. What they did to me was not my fault. They know it too. It had nothing to do with me. Whatever they were in feeling, it was kept from me. If there was a problem, they never told me. And I literally was walking on eggshells to make these people happy. So when you come at me, and there was another thing too. I wanted to go to Idaho Falls to spend some time with my sister. And she knew that, my dogs are important to me and definitely emotional support animals. But she said, you can't come if you take your animals with you. And I'm like, and so she refused to let me come if I wouldn't leave my animals. And I didn't want to pay for it, because it was really expensive to board them, and I wanted to stay for a little while. But no, she was like worried about her carpet, and I said to her, you're more worried about your carpet than having me come and stay. When and those dogs, I'm very attached to my animals, as you might guess I am, but I've had to be. I mean, they really have been a very wonderful support for me. But having gone through what I had gone through, was just insurmountably rough. And it wasn't that I didn't want to die. I just couldn't imagine the people that I loved the most cared so little. And I knew that night that my brother did not love me. He didn't. And for them to go this far for greed, and to go this far, all of them, to commit this kind of a crime, that they would want to completely end any hope for a future, that they wanted me dead so much that they were willing to go to this extent to make it happen. And so you want to ask me to step back and not say what happened. It's very difficult. I can't do that because I matter. My life matters. And I love my children, and I love my life. And God gave me a voice and a gift, a beautiful voice, a beautiful talent. And I knew that. I've always known that. And that was enough. That was enough to keep me going. God loves me. When you're someone that's had to be on your knees your whole life because of the domineering and abusive personalities that you've been raised in and surround you. Believe me, saying that you pray to God or have a relationship with him is not a trivial thing. It's an actual thing. It's totally different than the average person. To have that kind of faith where you know that you have to have that relationship with him in order to get from point A to point B. So when you ask me, and to pretend that you're religious and that you can actually do that to another human being, how in the hell dare you? Who are you, people? And you want me to not say the truth? And that isn't even beginning to talk about the kind of person and the man that I was married to. To what Kent did. You have no idea what that man put me and my sons through. My children are not his children. We do not have any children together. None. No, I want to come back. Actually, you know what? There is something else I want to say. If this was something that was actually being investigated, what would you do as an investigator first? If somebody was saying she did this, that, and the other, they would go and look for your history. No criminal history. They would look and see, okay, well, they would have known if they had looked, really did their jobs correctly, that I was in the hospital with a crushed shoulder. They would have known that I had COVID, right? I mean, I've been in Utah County for a long time, right? They would have known that I went through chemo and radiation. All of them knew. Even Oak Hills Ward, they all knew I had breast cancer. It was not a lie. And Utah County was the people in American Fork Hospital, Dr. Bott and Dr. Nuttall, and even the doctor up at Huntsman, John somebody. They all knew I had metastatic breast cancer. These were trained and skilled oncologists. And so here you are, you go through something like that and you're diminished anyway. When you think, first of all, that you're going to die, right? And then you go through all those treatments, right? And then you find out your family could give a shit about you and what you did, okay? And now you want me to stand here and be like, oh, that's okay that you kicked me around and treated me that way and committed all these crimes? Oh, I understand. Well, actually, no, I do not understand. Of course I don't. What you have done is just monstrous. It is, and I cannot pretend to save you. I can't, because I know how you really feel about me and the extremes that you went to treat me this way. And you think now I should just be a doormat. Are you kidding me? No, I'm not. And just the fact that you have the arrogance to think that you could go out and perpetuate these crimes and hurt an innocent person that really needed love and not hate, but you chose to handle it this way. And the investigators that decided to go along and help them and not do your jobs, your very important jobs in a community where people depend upon you. And you want me to be quiet? Well, hell no. No. Of course not. It's not about revenge. And it isn't even about my broken heart. It's the fact that you have it inside of you to commit this kind of a crime, to commit these crimes, and that you could do it again to the next victim. There's more to it than just me. And I'm probably not the only one. This is a bigger deal than just me. This says who you are and what you're capable of. That is serious and it's frightening. No, don't ask me to not feel my feelings and to not feel the hurt. And it's more hurt than it is anger. If it was just anger, I would have said this a long time ago. But it's been hurt, and to be so deeply hurt and so disappointed that you don't know what to say, that you're speechless. It's so bad that people could be so incredibly disrespectful because they wanted to hide their past crime. That was why. That was the motive, because they had already committed crime and they were trying to cover it up. That's it. And so they came up with these lies. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the truth. They know it, I know it, and now you do too. It's just the way it is.